Yo guys, Superior David here. If you know me, you know that I freaking love Halloween and it's that spooky time of year, so I thought now would be the perfect time to do a video on the 10 scariest cards in Standard right now. These are the cards that you are terrified of your opponent having. They are powerful and can totally change the course of the game if you don't respect or anticipate them. Then once they hit the board, you just want to scream. So I hope you guys enjoy this Halloween treat. But before we get into it, let me tell you guys something like really freaking scary. There are people out there who don't hit the like button, even though it's super helpful for the YouTube algorithm. So please hit the like button because it really does help me out, and you might as well subscribe while you're at it, or else I'm gonna have to TP your house on Halloween. And with that, let's get on to the 10 scariest cards in Standard. Starting this list off at number 10, we've got, in my opinion, the scariest hunter card in Standard right now, and that is Dinotamer Bran. When you have that realization that the hunter you're going up against is a Highlander hunter, you start dreading turn 7, because an on-curve Dinotamer Bran is so incredibly overwhelming, especially when you're behind or even on the board. You probably just lose most of those games. And then if your opponent doesn't play Bran on curve, the threat of Bran is so terrifying that you're constantly making plays so that if the Highlander Hunter does draw the Bran and play it, you don't die, or it creates a really awkward board for them. Bran is just this constant terrifying threat looming in every Highlander Hunter deck, waiting to get the big old smork on you when you least expect it. If this list were made earlier in the year, Bran would probably be number 1, because Highlander Hunter was everywhere, but since the years progressed, I feel like the deck has sort of fallen out of favor. At least I rarely encountered on ladder, so I have a hard time putting Bran higher on the list, but I think he's a solid number 10. Now moving on from Big Daddy Bran, coming in at number 9, we got the pre-spell Apotheosis. Now, I don't think Apotheosis is the most powerful pre-spell, but I think it's definitely one of the scariest, if not the scariest, because if a priest plays it on the right minion at the right time, they can totally snatch victory back from the jaws of defeat, especially against more aggressive decks. Then on top of this, Priest has so many ways to generate additional copies of Apotheosis. They don't even need to draw them from their deck. They can just generate a random copy, and you have no real way of knowing this until they play it on a minion, and by then it's too late. They get the lifesteal off, they get the healing, then maybe they heal out of lethal range, and you just lose the game. And Apotheosis is sort of similar to Bran in that its bark can often be just as bad as its bite. Just knowing that a priest can potentially cast an Apotheosis on a minion scares players into trading more with minions rather than go face, just so they don't get punished by it. And anything that can make someone not go face, especially an aggro deck, seems pretty scary to me. But I think the scariest thing about Apotheosis is that it forced me to talk about priests for an entire minute, so we're moving on. Coming in at number 8, don't let the size of this minion lure you into a false sense of security, because it can be pretty scary, and that is the warrior minion, Risky Skipper. Skipper has been run in most warrior decks since its release because it's powerful, but on top of that, it's also super flexible. It allows warrior to do a bunch of things that they really want to do at the same time, and I think this flexibility is what makes it so terrifying. You see the warrior drop the Skipper, and it clears your board, gains them a bunch of armor, and just when you think they're done, they rip a Battle Rage to draw a third of their deck, and you're just man, what is my life? And then since Risky Skipper is a pirate, it can be tutored up very easily with the Ankar, which creates this even scarier situation where you know that they have this Skipper in hand, but you can't really do anything about it. That inevitability is just really scary. And of course, there's always the chance to generate the infamous third copy of Risky Skipper off of the Skyrider, making it just that much scarier. You thought 2 copies of Skipper were bad, here's the surprise third one that you never expect. Even though you probably should expect it, because the RNG always just screws you over. So I think all things considered, Risky Skipper may not be the mightiest looking Hearthstone card, but I think it's definitely like a very scary little gremlin. Now, keeping with the theme of small yet very scary minions, coming in at number 7, we've got Shadow Jeweler Hanar, with honorable mentions going to Face Stalker and Sethic Veilweaver. These cards all sort of fall under the banner of 2-drops that can take over the game if left unchecked. I decided that Hanar is the scariest of these cards, though, due to the fact that it's a legendary, so the chance of your opponent actually having it is smaller since you can only have 1 copy of it. And then it also generates secrets, which are amongst some of the scariest cards to deal with because of the hidden information, especially when you're dealing with secrets from a variety of classes. There are a lot of secrets that make it super annoying to get Hanar off the board, and you test them all in different ways, and it's really stressful to manage if the Hanar gets played in the first few turns of the game. If the rogue generates a paladin secret, it could be eye for an eye, but for all you know, it's redemption or never surrender. And early in the game, you often don't have the luxury of being able to test for a secret due to not having anything developed on the board yet. So you just sort of have to hope and pray that it's not the secret that screws you over the most. And that's really scary, that you could potentially guess wrong and lose the game on the spot, or maybe just set yourself back immensely. So I think These 2 drops I mentioned are all very scary. Don't want to understate the scariness of the terror of Sethic Veilweaver and Face Stalker, but to me, Hanar is the most terrifying of all these 2 drops for the above reasons. Now, moving on to number 6, we've got a Demon Hunter spell that makes you shake in your boots when it's cast against you, and that is Skull Guldan. By itself, Skull Guldan isn't that scary, but the truly frightening thing about this card are like the ridiculous combos that you can pull off due to its mana cheating outcast effect. I've played against a ton of Soul Demon Hunter. If you played ladder, you've probably played against a ton of Soul Demon Hunter as well. And whenever they rip the outcasted Skull Guldan, my heart sort of sinks, because I know if they hit like any of their big cards like Soul Shard Lapidary, Glybound Adept, they could set up these powerful swing turns where they burst me down for like half my life in ways I can't even like anticipate because of the mana cheating effect. There's the possibility they hit cheaper stuff like, like Penflinger or Soul Shear, but you don't really know what they get until they play the cards out. So until then, you just sort of hope that they don't kill you from Half-Life. And like I've said with many cards already, the mystery just makes Skull Guldan that much scarier. I mean, that, and of course the art prominently features a skull on it, which is pretty spooky as well. I mean, like if we were going off of like just the art for these cards, I think Skull would probably be number 1. Very, very freaky looking art. But anyways, we're moving on to the halfway mark here, and we've got our first neutral minion. Coming in at number 5, we got Lorekeeper Polk. Now, you might be thinking, what? Lorekeeper Polk, he's not so scary. He's just got Chill Wind Yeti stats, no big deal, doesn't do anything when he hits the board. But, Skull Guldan, really scary card because, they draw cards, you don't know what they're drawing. They could be anything. But with Lorekeeper Polk, you know exactly what they're drawing, and that makes them that much scarier in my opinion. Like, your opponent plays Polk, you know that they're drawing their most expensive, powerful cards in their deck over the next few turns. Just to put things into context here, that means like Highlander Hunter plays this, they're top decking Bran, a card that's on this list, and then like they follow that up with like a Dragon Bane, another very scary card. Or if you had like the misfortune of queuing into Galakron Rogue, for example, they play the Polk, they top deck Galakron, which they could then play to like draw a 1-mana Kronks guaranteed. So yeah, like you may not think it on its surface, but Polk is a pretty scary card. But I think like the scariest thing about him though is that like most decks outside of Bomb Warrior can't interact with this effect. So not only is your opponent going to draw all the most powerful cards in their deck, there's just nothing you could do about it. And this inevitability makes Polk so scary in my opinion, and really cements his spot on this list. And now moving on from Polk, we've got another legendary minion, but this time from Rogue. Coming in at number 4, we've got Edwin Van Cleave. If you've ever played against a rogue, you probably know why Edwin is scary. If your opponent goes in on an Edwin early in the first few turns of the game and you can't answer it, you probably just lose on the spot. And, we could argue all day if this is good for the game or not, but the fact of the matter is that insta-losing a game, sometimes as early as turn 2 if your opponent is on the coin, is just terrifying. Edwin has been a scary card for a while, but with the addition of like lackeys and value 1-drops like Pharaoh Cat and Wand Thief, this 3-mana 2/2 has become even more of a monster. It's just easier to pump up an Edwin earlier in the game, and then on top of this, some of the lackeys and the value 1-drops I mentioned, they replace themselves. So now like your opponent goes in on a giant Edwin early in the game, and then they still have like a hand full of cards. Sometimes they end up with even more cards depending on like what they randomly generate. I can honestly say nothing in Hearthstone scares me more than going up against a rogue who full keeps their hand on the coin, because most of the time, like 99% of the time, they're probably going all in on the Edwin like turn 2 or 3. And basically anytime Rogue plays a bunch of cards and they're still floating 3 mana, I'm like holding my breath in fear that Edwin is coming down. And I think that's just a testament to how scary of a card Edwin is. And now we're moving on to the top 3 scariest cards in Standard. So those who are faint of heart, tread lightly, because things are only getting scarier from here on out. Starting with number 3, we've got another much maligned classic minion, and that is Sorcerer's Apprentice. The recently nerfed mage cards were definitely some scary ones, but I think we all know that the real monster in Small Spell Mage is Sorcerer's Apprentice. Your opponent plays her, and you don't know exactly what they're going to do, but you know that they are going to screw you over and not pay mana doing it. And if you don't immediately kill Sorcerer's Apprentice, then they might even just run away with the game. Like a lot of the cards on this list, she's not like that scary on her own, but she like enables and amplifies pretty much everything Mage wants to do, all the powerful cards they want to abuse at the moment, to the point where like you're just hoping your opponent doesn't have Apprentice in hand. And that's the scariest thing about Sorcerer's Apprentice. You can't really like do anything about her until she hits the board. You can't really like preempt her, and by then it's usually too late because your opponent will cast a bunch of spells, freeze your board, reload their hand, and then hey, maybe top off with a mana giant if they feel like it. Sorcerer's Apprentice allows mages to completely like flip games around in a single turn to the point where you can never really count a mage out of the game until it's over. And for like all the above reasons, I think she is worthy. Sorcerer's Apprentice is worthy of this number 3 spot. And now, keeping with the theme of terrifying 2-mana 3/2s, coming in at number 2, we've got Zephyrus. Honestly, I don't know how you can think Zephyrus is not a scary card. He literally gets you the perfect card for the situation you're in, and just having the perfect card at the right time is often enough to win a game of Hearthstone. So as soon as you realize you're going up against a Highlander deck, you're constantly worrying about Zephyrus. Every play becomes carefully calculated to not overextend into a Zephyrus board clear or some unexpected lethal. And like many of the cards on this list, you don't know if your opponent has Zephyrus in hand. Like sometimes you can do like hand reading to determine like, hey, that might be the Zephyrus, but like you usually don't explicitly know. And just the mere threat of a possible Zephyrus is enough to keep forcing you to play around it, whether they have it in hand or not. You never truly relax against a Highlander deck until you see the Zephyrus. And if you do and you're not dead, then you breathe a huge sigh of relief because the scariest card in the deck is gone. But Zephyrus is not only scary for the person playing against it, it can also be quite scary for the person playing it because Zephyrus can be a little temperamental sometimes and not give you the card you necessarily want. I'm looking at you, Temple Enforcer. I don't know what Zephyrus sees in this card, but, you know, honestly, I ship it. All things considered, though, I think the flexibility of Zephyrus, in addition to the potential risk of him like not giving you what you want, makes him the second scariest card in Standard for sure, hands down. Now, some of you might be saying here, David, Zephyrus is literally the perfect card. What can possibly be scarier than the perfect card? Well, you know, I've got one word for you guys: random. In my opinion, the number 1 scariest card in Standard right now is easily Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. You play this card and you literally don't know what it's going to do. It's the ultimate Hail Mary that you put your faith in to hopefully do the thing you want to do, whether that's like kill your opponent, clear the board, draw some cards, and often that faith is rewarded with the box helping out your opponent and absolutely like losing the game for you on the spot. Honestly, like, you know, like I'm not even sure if I'm more scared of having like Puzzle Box played against me or playing it myself. Puzzle Box is just like a unique card that is almost equally terrifying for both you and your opponent due to the insane amount of randomness that is inherent to this card. So I think for this reason, Puzzle Box has to be the scariest card in Standard. This card is truly like madness incarnate, and it will consume us all. And there you have it, guys, the 10 scariest cards in Standard. Let me know down in the comments if I missed any cards that you're scared of. And, you know, I hope you all have really spooky Halloweens. Make sure to give yourself a treat and subscribe to the channel. Really superior view really helps me out as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.